Hello, welcome back to the happiness game for romantic relationships. I'm Ija Martins, licensed marriage and family therapist, couples therapist. I know we started a series last week about relationships and all those games that we can use and for activities for couples. And last week we just talked about the juicy first date. Today I'm going to take you through a detour because I watched this powerful documentary last week. It's called The Affair Dispeller. It's by Elizabeth Lowe. So it made me think what this movie is really about. Is it about affairs in China and why people have affairs in China? Is it about emotional avoidance, conflict avoidant? Or is it about this dark, undercovered couple therapist or relationship experts that come in people's families and trying to stop affairs and restore the order, the traditional family dynamic? So let's take a dive in, shall we? I would like to talk about it from the perspective of attachment theories, developmental theories, and culture element, and what does it mean for us as clinicians, and as well as for people who are interested in culture in general, and especially if you're wanting to know relationships, transgression, infidelity, and how that show up in China, and why do we have these professionals developed to interfere with affairs? That's very different from the Western world where I live. All right, let's do it. So what's really intriguing to me, this documentary, is that it's not just about the deception of, in all affairs. They can be all different and unique, but there is something in common in affairs and transgression, which is deception, dishonesty, lack of consent. Right? Otherwise, it will be consensual polyamorous relationship, right? Not affairs if they have agreements. It's this emotional avoidance throughout the movie, the documentary, how this third person undercover therapist professionals, they call Wang Lao Shi, teacher Wang. So how she got in, a little bit spoiler alert, how she got into this role as a third person is she is in education. She said, I am in education. I also learned a little bit about psychology and counseling. So let me just talk to you. Let me hear you out. And she does a lot of reflection, validation. But then she also used psychological tactics and emotional manipulation to break the affair partner and their affair, the object of their love affair. We call it 小三, little third in Chinese, like the extra, right? So until they decided to break up, and then it seems the original marriage is restored. But is it? The couple never talked about it directly. What happened? They never share their feelings of what they feel, each of them feel. Is there any dissatisfaction in the relationship? And how to repair this bond. At the end, the woman or the wife kind of brought it up a little bit while they're taking a walk along the water. But the husband just brushed it off. Oh, let's not talk about it. We're here now. Let's go back to our life. Like nothing happened. Right? So in some way, the avoidance is penetrating throughout these relationships in our culture, that even the third person's intervention is a way to avoid the conflict between the couple. So interestingly, in the movie, there's either the 小三儿 and the person, the woman who got involved with the husband, or the therapist, dispeller, trying to say that the person who get involved, intervene in other people's marriage, tend to have avoidant attachment. She's trying to indicate that because they cannot think of themselves deserve this complete love, as in a marriage, in a committed relationship, that they cut into other people's life and kind of take the partner from this wife for a part-time partner, like a step-in. I actually don't agree. It's interesting because psychotherapy is still a very new industry in China. I travel to China every year, that I also communicate with my colleagues there. So there's a lot of psychoeducation. There are not a lot of people want counseling, but there are people willing to take classes, read articles, and listen to some podcasts and watch some TV programs to get knowledge, which is great. But I also tend to misuse and misinterpret some of the terms. For example, avoidant attachment is really someone who is super independent to meet their own emotional needs, that they do not trust other people to meet their needs. So they're avoiding this high intensity of connection in a romantic relationship, which is another defense of intimacy. Basically a fear of intimacy. It's a protective mechanism that keep them safe for a period of time. But there's a price that comes with it, right? And you can be really close to someone and feel the joy and the sensations and the safety of being connected and deeply attached to someone that meets your emotional needs, which is a wonderful experience, right? So, but this woman is not emotional. She's not, maybe not in an avoidant attachment style, but more avoiding the ongoing roles that play in their relationship. As a relationship develop, if it's a complete relationship, at some point you will have conflicts, right? Not just to see each other once in a while, like a long distance on the side, and then you don't deal with a lot of issues, so you don't ever get to the conflict that you will have while you're living together, having a life together. Like the husband and the wife, they have a child together, have a house together. There will be conflict they have to talk about and work through, which bring them closer. So there's a third person that doesn't enjoy that level of intimacy with this man because the structure they set for the relationship has a limitation. It is more like a lover, right, than a partner. So in some way, it is not avoidant attachment, but more avoidant of emotional intimacy on both ends. And there might be some avoidance from the wife as well, right? And she noticed her husband is different, but she doesn't bring it up. She went to the beauty salon, did her hair, and when her husband didn't notice that, she got upset. But she still cannot bring it up, saying, hey, I want you to look at me. I don't feel your presence. I don't feel we're connecting. Can we talk about it? There's none of that, of course. And it's also not in my culture, not in Chinese culture, to talk about feelings, right? So what is being honored in Chinese culture is harmony. Harmony is for the family, harmony for the system, right? So the husband and the wife don't want to stir up the pot and creates this tension and this intensity in their relationship to talk about what's really going on in their relationship. And that none of them want to burden the other person. That's a key word, burden. So when you talk about your emotional needs and in some way there's a fear that you create burden for the other person, there's a rupture in the relationship when you're not aligned. So for Chinese culture is very much about alignment, that we'll agree, we'll get along, it will peaceful, right? 其乐融融, 合家欢乐. It's like everybody's happy, and I hear that all the time from my clients. So I just want everyone to be happy. I'm like, good luck. How does it work? We all have our needs and desires, and there will be differences, and sometimes conflict happens. We gotta talk through it and resolve it, and then we get closer and closer and get to know each other. So it is this over dependency on harmony in sacrificing some individual differences. Is almost just not looking at each individual with any differences. It's the polar opposite of the individualistic culture, where it's all about you, it's all about me, it's all about individual unique traits and desires and dreams and goals, right? And there's a ignoring of a larger system. So if those two cultures can talk to each other, integrate their differences, I think we can have something really beautiful here that honor each person's uniqueness and connection with a larger system. So I also think about this as interesting intervention from a couple therapist perspective, because I was born in China and I was trained in the US as a couple therapist. So I've seen both worlds, right? When I do sessions in English and do Chinese, it's quite different with different clients. And I see there's some culture translation that maybe I can bridge a little bit here. What I'm trained in is attachment theory and developmental theory. So for attachment theory, it's very easy to understand, and that fits into Chinese culture beautifully, that we also very much value the bond, right? And there's actually emphasis on bonding over separating. So a lot of Chinese clients may have a hard time with individualization and separation. And so are they having a hard time with differentiation, which means that they can tell about what they want, who they are, that's different from other people, while still stay connected with the parents, with the caregiver and the attachment figure. So therefore, nobody gets that training, and it's really hard to assert yourself in a relationship, in an intimate relationship. So that creates kind of what we call in the West enmeshed codependent relationship. But if you look at from a culture perspective, that is the norm. Okay, you want to consider the larger system's needs. Your needs always should be sacrificed for the bigger needs, which has its merit and in a lot of ways, but it also has its price. The price is individuals feel a little bit stifled. They cannot express who they are, and they cannot be authentic and relating to get deeper in their relationship. Maybe that's not what they're looking for, to get deeper in the relationship, right? Maybe they care more about how the society, how the bigger system, how the group are doing instead of individuals. Maybe when the group is doing better, the individual definitely benefits from that. So the concept of differentiation is very challenging and difficult for my Chinese clients. And then it's helpful for them to see when they have their own voice and they are being heard and validated, and then they didn't disconnect from their partner and they didn't lose that love, that attachment. And it takes time to test that and being held and contained, validated, and trusting that. The trust takes time and repetitive ruptures and repairs, right? So it's an interesting concept to bring in and to look at it from a different cultural lens. And over-independent might not be good. Over-dependent is not good either. And how do you define the interdependence is really depending on the context of the culture of each individual families. A lot of couples I see are coming from two different cultures. Even there are, one ABC, American-born Chinese, the other was born in China. There's a huge difference for values, how you bring up, how you got brought up. So it's very important to hear and be curious about the other person's perspective and understand that without thinking, oh no, if I listen to them and validate them, then what I believe is not true. That is not true. There's space for everybody's truth. Well, I hope this is entertaining for you. And if you're curious and look into that, there's also New York Times Modern Love has a podcast on this documentary of Fair Dispeller. I will link it down below. Till next week, my friends.